So what you can support with SEVMM, what you can now support with CCM. It's a very, very rich platform of non-Windows products that Microsoft's now supporting. So if you haven't taken a look at what's out there and what you can now do on a Windows platform, I urge you to do so. A lot of these can be spun up on Windows 8 Hyper-V or Windows 8.1 Hyper-V. From experience, CentOS and Ubuntu install really, really well, so check those out. And Microsoft's also now one of the biggest contributors to the open source projects in terms of making contributions to the Linux kernel. So it's a pretty rich environment now that we are working in, and definitely non-Windows. Let's discuss Mac OS X. So what we're doing, awesome, thank you. Cheers for the AV guys. Fingers up online. Of course, now I have to find out which one's mine. That's okay. You know, yeah?
Yep.
You know everything. Good.
Almost.
Peter, you almost know everything. Okay, this will be good. In terms of Mac OS X, what we now have is a native agent within SCCM 2012 Service Pack 1. When that originally came out, it supported Mac OS X 10.6 and 10.7, and when CU1 came out, which was in January, I believe, that added in support for 10.8. We don't have any dates around 10.9 at the moment. Now, what we actually need, we do need PKI in terms of Active Directory search services. We need at least one SCCM site server with an internet name. Now, it doesn't actually have to be an internet name. It could be the internal name, but you just say your internet name is also your internal name, and that actually works fine. It has to be HTTPS. Now, the reason for this is that Microsoft make no assumptions about the configuration of Macs in your environment. So they don't assume that they're on the domain or anything. They treat them as untrusted internet-based machines, which means that when they auth to this SCCM site server, they have to do so using a cert, which means you need a management point role and a distribution point role somewhere in your environment running HTTPS, which have been enabled to support Macs. You also need an enrollment point and an enrollment proxy point. You normally use those for mobiles, or at least the mobiles which SCCM can support, which is Windows Mobile, not Windows Phone, Windows Mobile, and a Nokia Symbian. So I'm sure you're all running out to do that. The thing that you don't have to do is change your site mode to HTTPS. So by default, SCCM runs in HTTP or HTTPS. If you don't want to cut your entire site across to HTTPS, and most people don't want to, then all you need is a secondary site server. Sorry, not a secondary site, just another site server attached to the same primary, which has an HTTPS-enabled management point and DP, and you're done. And in terms of installation and enrollment, when SP1 came out, it was just terminal-based. So you logged on to the terminal, installed the agent, and then ran an enrollment procedure where it jumped out, grabbed the cert, drops it back, you were done. In 2012 R2, which Peter will show, is actually a GUI-based installation now, so it's a lot nicer. You can also automate this procedure as well. So script-based installation is still available to you, and you can do this over SSH. So if you have a centralized way of pushing out SSH and running scripts against your Mac environment, you can automate the SCCM agent installation and enrollment. And with that, Peter's going to show enrollment.
That we switched to the Mac device.
It is a genuine one, ladies and gentlemen.
And
what was that?
A glass, I think.
That was a glass.
Okay.
See what happens in BYOD, things go wrong.
Yep. So I pre-downloaded the Mac client. Let's open the DMG. And from that we can install the client. How many of you attended the session of Kent Aglund yesterday? So you already have seen this part. We'll show you more later. So we're just installing the client. All done. All we need to do is reboot the system, and we can. After that, we are able to enroll the machine into Config Manager. How many of you are using Mac OS X devices? Ah, quite a couple. So what we do next is enroll the computer into Config Manager. So I have to supply my credentials.
So you're enrolling this against an SCCM 2012 R2 site server. Yeah.
And within a few minutes, we should be able to enroll it. Let's have a look. What I did wrong. Let's apply the domain name. Enrollment has been done. So when we go to the system preferences, we here see the Config Manager client. And there we can see that it just has been enrolled, that it has a certificate that the certificate is installed, and we are able to connect to the Config Manager site.
Which is effectively the same as triggering a machine policy refresh in a traditional SCCM environment.
Yeah, that's true. So if we switch to the R2 environment, we should be able to see the MacBook Air. So let's try to zoom in. There we see the MacBook.
Now, over time, it's going to then trigger software inventory and report that back in a traditional manner. So it doesn't use classic the WMI; it uses SIM, which is the same implementation that the agent uses on Linux and Unix servers too. So it's was it Common Infrastructure Model or something?
Yep.
Which masquerades as the WMI to SCCM. Depending on your scheduling, that'll take somewhere between half an hour to an hour for a newly enrolled Mac to take place. Let's switch back to the slide deck. Awesome. All right. Now, you're going to talk on application management?
Oh, there it is. Yeah, so application management, we're now, since we have installed the Mac client now, we're able to deploy applications to the Mac client. Before we are able to do that, because Config Manager isn't able to recognize the native PKG or DMZ of the
DMG, PKG,
DMG files. Yeah. We have to wrap it into a CMake with the CMake wrapper. When doing that, we're able to support the app PKG of MPKG and DMG files. And how many of you are already using the new app model?
So who's using SCCM 2012 at the moment? A few of you, and are using the new applications and and the app model. So looking at detection methods and supersedence and requirements and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Now the detection of if the application is installed is done through the application bundle ID or the package ID. Yeah. So that's
similar
imported
to
from
the MSI code.
Yeah, it's imported from the CMake wrapper. So, and the deployment is done to devices, not users, because it's the Mac is treated as a mobile device. So, Config Manager doesn't know which user is logged on.
Now, we were going to get straight into application, into showing that, but it takes about 5 minutes for a newly enrolled Mac to be able to get policy and to see applications coming through. So we'll keep an eye on it, and then we'll come back to it. All right, so let's have a bit of a chat about what SCCM is up to in terms of integration with Windows Intune. As I've already alluded to, the native mobile platforms which SCCM can support are limited. It's always been relatively limited. And that's not where the development efforts are being targeted. MDM is much better handled by Windows Intune. Is anyone here using just Windows Intune at the moment? one person kind of embarrassed to put his hand up? Maybe? Okay, that's cool, that's cool. So what we get when we integrate, I'll draw back. When SCCM 2012 Service Pack 1 came out, that gave you the ability to also link it to a Windows Intune subscription. At that point, Windows Intune almost becomes a middle management tier. Effectively a cloud-based, always-on management point and distribution point for your mobile devices. Intune has native agents for iOS, for Windows Phone, for Windows RT. When it was originally released, not for Android, because it was just basically too damn hard to get one, but in SCCM 2012 R2, with the wave of Intune which will support that, there's now, or there will be, a native agent for Android as well. So we can do a heck of a lot more. In terms of what it looks like and why you would want to do this, so you've got your SCCM environment, you've got your single administrative console, and you've got your administrator. They are managing your traditional environments. They're managing Windows PCs, Windows to go, and Windows Embedded, and now, of course, Mac OS X. Hooked onto that is Windows Intune, and attached to that, we have our mobile devices. So Windows RT, Windows Phone 8, iOS. There's Android in the slide, but we'll say Android, yes, but not really, in brackets, until later, close brackets. But what all this does is that it feeds all of that information back into your single administrative console. So if you were doing MDM at the moment through Windows Intune, just natively in Windows Intune, and you had a CCM separately, you are managing two completely separate frameworks. Integrating them gives you the ability to do everything from your SCCM administrative console with all of the niceties that come along with that, like roles-based access, reporting, collections, all that nice stuff, and integration with AD, which is another cool thing. In terms of what we can do an over-the-air enrollment, so the mobile device doesn't actually have to come on premise in order for us to enroll it. You get a self-service company portal where users can access applications which you've made available to them, and we'll go into more depth in that. The applications are targeted at the user, not at the device. So if a user is allowed to access a particular application, if they have an iPad and a Windows Phone 8, they can see those same applications on both. We can do settings management through policy, some quite nice stuff in SP1, and a heck of a lot more stuff in R2. We can inventory the device from a hardware perspective, and we can also do retirement and wipe, all of which are remote. I'm not going to go through this. This is more for your reference. Grab the slide deck afterwards. There's a number of tables like this throughout. Alternatively, I can sit there and read every cell if you would like. No takers? All right, fair enough. All right, let's discuss MDM. So what do we need to actually make this work? It's not that much. You'll be very pleased to know. We obviously need a Windows Intune subscription, and you can sign up for one of those and get a 30-day trial if you so wish. You do need to federate with Windows Azure. Anyone done that yet? Anyone absolutely terrified to do that and has absolutely no intention? Oh, good. You're brave. You're brave. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's over quickly. I'll put it like that. You federate and it's done, and you think, what was all the fuss about? Actually, if you federated your environment to support Office 365, then it's already done. Your AD users are already set up for Windows Intune. Intune talks to Azure, Office 365 talks to Azure. Azure is a source of everything wonderful. And you also need DSync in order to support that, so that any changes you're making in your on-premise AD are replicated up. You also need the Windows Intune Connector site role, which is a non-configurable site role that you install generally on your primary site server. It doesn't really need to be set up for scaling or anything. All it does is says, this is the site server that will upload config changes into Windows Intune, and that's it. If you want to do something a bit nicer, so when your users log on, you don't want them to have to manage two separate passwords, which by default in scenario 1, they do. So they have a Windows Intune password and an AD password. A lot of users don't like that. They get confused. Users are so easily confused when it comes to passwords, so why make it worse for them? We can do SSO, where when they log on to their device, they are actually authoring against your on-premise AD. Passwords are not stored in Azure, just the user account info. For that, you need Active Directory Federation services. And if you want this to be available externally, which you probably do, you also need an ADFS proxy. That takes a bit more to set up, but again, once it's done once, you don't need to do it again, and it requires very little ongoing maintenance. The device enrollment process, it's done per device and it's done by the user. Okay, so it isn't something that you can centrally set up to just push out 50 iPads. It is a per user, per device thing. It's also done by Windows Intune. So the user, the device, never talks directly to a CCM. So the advantage of this is that as long as the CCM can talk to Intune and the device can talk to Intune, regardless of where it is, on the road, at home, Wi-Fi, doesn't really matter, then it is being managed. It also means that you don't have to open up weird and wonderful ports, put servers in the DMZ, nothing along those lines. And as I mentioned earlier, Intune just effectively acts like a cloud-based management point in DP. So let's kick into our demo fest. We're going to not worry about slides and just show the gadgets. All right, so can you, now your Mac is doing its thing, so do you want to kick back and show that?
Let's have a look. Yeah. So I think almost 2 minutes after James was starting to talk, the application came up. So we're now able to install the application, install it at the deadline, so we're able to postpone the installation if somebody needs to do some another work. But we're able to install it now. In this case, it's Firefox. And we're all done. If we go to the application lists, we'll see that Firefox has been installed and ready to use.
And if the user uninstalls it, but the deployment still exists, then the next time the Mac talks back, he goes, you uninstalled that, bang, yeah. Drop it down again. So we can now be evil as CCM administrators to our Mac users.
So the deployment, yeah, the deployment is the purpose of the deployment is mandatory. So
yes, it's a required one.
Yeah, it's a required one.
Okay, cool. Now, could you kick me back across to number 2? No, this is not the time to go and install updates on my primary. Go away. All right, cool. So what I've got, this is just a console opened up to my SP1 primary site server. So what I wanted to do is just very quickly run through some of the infrastructural stuff. So there's my main site. If I go into my site server roles, this is the site server. So SCCM01 is my primary. SCCM02 is the one that I have configured for HTTPS management. So as you can see in here, that's got the enrollment point and the enrollment proxy point, which the Macs enroll through. It's also got, if I go into the site system, you can see I needed to specify a fully qualified domain name, but it is actually my internal name. It's the setting, sorry, it's the tick box which is important, not necessarily what you put in the field. So that's all good. And if I take a look at my management point, it's been signed for HTTPS. I allow intranet and internet connections and allow mobiles and Mac. And the same is true for the DP. So that when the Mac talks out, it's authoring using the cert which you saw Peter enroll, and that is stamped by the CA. In order to show who can actually, here we go. In order to show who can actually do that, if we jump into client settings and take a look at our default settings, and we go into enrollment. So what we've got is setting allow users to enroll mobiles and Mac, and I have an enrollment profile, which is my Mac enrollment profile. I've just called it Mac enrollment because I'm original like that. And the cert which it's grabbing is a particular cert template which I've created in ADCS and which has been signed by my CA. So when the Mac talks back, it's talking to a management point in a DP which are using certs also signed by that CA, and so everyone knows who everyone else is, and it's all good. Now, as far as my Windows Intune environment, if I jump out into hierarchy, I've got my Windows Intune subscription here. and I've set up a number of options. I've created a user collection called Windows Intune users. You have to have a collection like that when you first set this up, so that Intune knows who are the users who are allowed to perform enrollment. Now, this can be linked to an AD group, another collection, whatever you want to do. So it can be quite dynamic. We've got a company name, privacy documentation, some basic customization, but also which site code this Intune subscription is actually matched to. I haven't enabled Android management. As you can see, I don't know if you can see, yeah, there are no editable properties for the Android platform. So at the moment you can enable it. Yes, I do want to turn that off. All it means is that if an Android device attempts to enroll, it's a case of yes or no. You can do that. It never appears in the SCCM console because there's no management profile, but the user can get applications that you push to it. So if you are developing Android-based applications, I think they're .apks, you can use SCCM to push this out and it will be okay, it will work. But you don't get that rich management because it isn't a native agent in SP1. That's changing.
R2, it is.
R2, native agent. iOS, this is the one that most people are especially interested in. This is actually quite easy to do. You use SCCM to generate a management cert, you submit that to Apple, and you get an APN cert back. And basically that's what you use. That entire process takes about 2 minutes, so it's really easy to do. Windows RT, you need a code signing cert, because you're going to be pushing out content to Windows RT, and we will get into the whole side loading of applications a little later on. But that's a relatively straightforward one. That is a code signing cert which has been stamped again by my CS environment, but it could be an external code signing cert as well. And the tricky one is Windows Phone 8. In order to do this, you have to get a code signing cert, I think, from Symantec, and you've got to buy that. But there is a little a tool which you can download which will set this up so that you can test it in your own environment without having to buy a cert. It takes about maybe 10 minutes to set up, really, really easy. So those are the platforms which I've enabled and the infrastructure which supports it. So I'll jump straight into probably iOS. That's okay, leave it there, that's good. All right, so I've got my iPad. Here you go. Cool. Now I'll hide all those icons because they're really irritating. All right, so what I'm going to do is so I'm a user who's going to enroll for the first time. I'm going to navigate to portal.manage.microsoft.com. And it's going to say, yep, no problem, please sign in. So I'll type in my organizational name, James at CCM. Actually, before you do that, Pete, can you just pop that back up? Because what's going to occur, and let go, yep. So what's going to occur, when I hit next, it's not going to let me type in my password. Because this is a synchronized user from on-premise AD, it's going to say, hang on, you actually have a federation server. We have enabled you for single sign-on. So what it's done, it's actually redirected me to my local ADFS server. I'm going to auth against that, not against Intune. So I'll type this in. Peter will hide that because of Apple's wonderful approach to security. Bloody hell. I didn't say that. Did anyone say that? Oh, no, good. I typed my password in the username field, so that was spectacular.
That's even better.
Yep. Watch the Apple user go. All right, so I'm now authing against on-premise AD, and what it's going to do, it's going to have a think, and it's going to say, hang on, you're not enrolled. So it's going to change that URL from /mobile enrollment. It really is. There we go. Let's have a think. Blistering speed. There we go. So it says, no problem. You want some company apps and resources? We've got to install a management profile on your iPad. yes, this is my profile. I can get some details about that if I want. So it's dropping down a signing cert from Intune, not from my environment. And it's dropping down a profile service too. So I'll go, yep, no problem, install, go. Rolling the cert, dropping down the profile, yes. Generates the key. And nearly done. Not exactly the most fascinating part of the demo, I grant you. Here we go, and we're done. So I now have a management profile. It's going to bounce me back. As you can see on the bottom, it says after installation, click here to get your apps. And this is, it's going to take me to my company portal, which on the iPad admittedly doesn't look fantastic, but there are still applications. Now, I have already used SCCM to deploy some applications to this particular user. Now, it's important to note that I've actually got a number of mobile apps deployed to me, but they're not showing up here because it's the wrong platform. Okay, so these are only the ones which are supported for iPad or iPhone. So the first three, so the receiver, OneNote, and Prezi, they are all deep links. So within SCCM, all I did was I generated a new application with the link to the App Store. So if I say, yep, I want Prezi. So it says, yep, so click View App to view this app in an external store. And if I jump out, and it's going to take me to the App Store, and it's going to fire up Prezi. Or at least it's going to allow me to install that. Prezi for iPad. So I can go through and install that. Instead of that, my other option, so if I go home, apps, the bottom one, test at bad neighbor, that is actually the equivalent of a locally developed application. So I've actually got the IPA file and it's signed. So what I've done within SCCM is that I've just made a new application like I would any other, an MSI or an AppV. I've pointed it at that IPA file, and I've distributed the content to the distribution point role on Intune. So when I click, yes, I want this, instead of view app, it's going to go, yep, you can install this. It's going to say that it's installing. This one does take a little bit of time, so it's in progress, get apps. And if I drop that down, okay, it hasn't popped up yet. What it will do is give me a prompt and say, because then it's going to prompt me to accept the code signing cert that the developer used for that application. And then we're going to get a little pop-up. Here we go. That's the one. Yes, please, install. And it's down there, and now it's waiting. And then it's going to drop that content down from Windows Intune. It's also important to note, if you can just see just up there, we've got a new icon called Company Portal, or more specifically, Compan Ortal. Now that is the link which will take you directly back. It'll open up Safari, it'll go through the auth procedure, and your user can go back and get their applications. I won't wait for Bad Neighbor to install. I did this in Australia, and believe me, it installs and it opens, and it's the most pointless application in existence.
Just a test app.
I don't know what it does. It's something bounces badly. All right, so let's turn that off. So, iPad. iPhone's the same. Literally, it's the same. So what we want to do is cut over, probably, and look at some Windows 8 joy. So what we've done in the SP1 environment, if I jump into the software library, I have some Windows Store applications. Now, I'm not going into the standard deployment of applications on Windows 8, assuming that you know all that stuff. So what I have, I've got two applications, well, I've got obviously 5, but I've got 2 that I'm interested in. So Citrix Receiver, in this case, is, if I check out my deployment type, that is a Windows app package in the App Store. So if I go and take a look at the properties on that, the content, you can see that is literally a deep link. So if I'm logged onto a Windows 8 machine, and I can install that, and it's just going to grab that from the App Store and install it for me. Probably what I'm more interested in is something like this. Not that I'm especially interested in poker, but this is an AppX file. So it is a Windows 8 modern UI application, and I've done that myself. So maybe it's a line of business app, something along those lines, and you want to get that out into your environment without having to go through the Windows Store. So this is the whole thing of enterprise side loading of applications. Who knows how this works? You're about to, good. All right, so what I have is back-end content, which is literally just the application which has been done in Visual Studio and published as an AppX file. I have distributed this to 2 places. I have, take a look at the content locations. I've distributed this to manage.microsoft.com. That's my Windows Intune DP. I've also distributed it to 2 of my internal DPs. So if I am logged on to a domain-joined Windows 8 Pro or Enterprise machine, then I can install this application and I will get it from my local DP because I'm being managed with SCCM. And if I'm logged on somewhere else, preferably externally, I'm going to get this from Windows Intune. And I'll show you how. So if I jump out and fire up my Configuration Manager application catalog, this has been deployed to the user, so it's available for me to install, and there it is. Now I'm just going to install a modern UI application as if it was any other application. Trigger the install, yes, go. Going to drop that content down from a local DP. Take a look, downloading, installing software. It's installing now, and it's installed. So if I open up my modern UI applications, there it is there, poker. That's about what it does, but that's okay. That's okay. Perfect for the sales guys, no. Now, let's say that I am not logged on to this, but instead I'm logged on to a Surface RT, a Windows RT device instead, which we need to look up. I think that was, I think it was A.
There it is.
There we go.
Oh, we have to switch it.
Yep, switch, we're there. Awesome. So this is my Surface RT. I will use my picture password to log on because I'm geeky like that. Now this has already been enrolled. Okay, so if I can see that in my SCCM console, I can run reports against it, I can run inventory against it. It's all pretty cool. So because it's already enrolled, I have my company portal application. So this app can open. You must be joking.
No.
You know what? I couldn't find. Come on. Oh, jeez. Any chance we could bump up the resolution on this? Because I can't actually do the demo. Yeah, can we bump up the native screen raise on this? Nope. Okay. All right, no problem. That's okay. What I might do, I can sort this out here. I might get Peter to switch back and just have a bit of a discussion on Windows Phone, and I'll sort this out so I can show you.
Where's that clicker? Okay, so we're also able to enroll Windows Phone. We wanted to do this live, but we didn't have any cameras, so we took some snapshots earlier this morning. And what we need to do is just start up our phone and browse to the company apps in the system folder. Supply our credentials, connect to Windows Intune and install the company app or hub. So when that's done, we were receiving a certificate also from Windows Intune, and we were able to connect to the App Store. So now we're enrolled. We're able to go to the company portal, log on, and select any app you want to install. Also, in this environment, we have two kinds of apps: just a normal deployed app or a deep link. Let's first select Click Me. That's a sample app from Microsoft, and we can install it. We get a pop-up if we would really like to install it or not. Yeah, we would. And the application is being installed. So after that's done, you see in the middle, or just a little bit higher, you see the application Click Me. What we also can do is just publish an application that's a deep link to an application in the Windows Phone Store. So in this example, we deployed SkyDrive, and I already installed it on the app. So you see, it's already in my collection. How was James doing?
James is good. Yeah.
James is good.
Could you switch back to this one, number 2? All right, cool. In case anyone wants to know, you can do remote assist to Windows RT. There we go. So that's what we're using. See if I can I do actual size? I'll squish it a bit. That's gone. All right, there we go. It's a little bit squished, but that's okay. So I've got my company portal application, so I'm going to go in there. Now, it's timed me out, no problem. So what it's going to do is, again, it's going to prompt me to talk to Windows Intune. Now, because this is Windows RT, this is obviously not joined to a domain. So all of the, if you are using Windows Pro or Windows Enterprise and it's joined to the domain, you can sideload from, from anything that you wish to sideload from. So if I hit next again, it's going to work out, hey, you're not actually an Intune user, you're a federated user. So let's go and auth against your ADFS service. And in we go. And again, it's going to show me what applications I've got available to me. It's also going to show me what devices I have enrolled. So with a bit of luck, my iPad will actually show up there, and I could actually initiate a remote wipe from here. So yeah, if we look under devices, I've got my Surface RT, I've got my phone, I have actually enrolled it, and I've got my iPad. So if I jumped into my iPad, it shows me manufacturer, and I do actually have the option to wipe it, which I am not going to do because I haven't finished my games. Sorry, my work. I meant my work. Now, I've got 2 applications which have been made available onto RT. Again, the receiver is a deep link. So if I were to click on that, it's going to take me to the relevant application in the App Store and allow me to install it. But the one I'm interested in is this Poker one. Now, remember, I previously installed that from SCCM using a traditional application method. So, yeah, reinstall, go for it. So it's going to drop that down again via Windows Intune. I've had to do a code signing cert. It's got to trust that cert. More importantly, so if I jump in, it should be done. It's already downloaded the content. No, it hasn't. Are you downloading? Pending installation. Come on, you worked earlier. What's going on? All right. One of the things we can do, if you ever get something stuck, typing in start run WS reset will reset the Windows store cache. So if you've got any applications which are stuck in pending, you can go back and flush it, which is always useful. So let's go back into my company portal. Come on. Okay, install. Now the question is, of course, this is not domain joined, so how am I actually able to do this? The way that you do it is you need an enterprise sideloading key. So you do actually need to buy a key in order for this to work. Now, if you check on Microsoft Volume Licensing Services for the volume licensing customers amongst you, depending on what sort of agreement you have, you should see some sideloading keys. Now, the advantage, let me see, that says it's installed. Hopefully, it has actually installed and it's not saying pending. Already installed, there we go. So go out here. There's Poker. Hooray. And we are done. Now, if I jump into the SCCM console and jump into software library, you can see I've got Windows RT sideloading keys here. They're allowed a certain number of activations, and I've used one of them up because the RT has jumped out, talked to Intune, Intune talks to SCCM, and SCCM has go, yep, no problem, sideloading key, out you get. So all of that has been done within SCCM, but the RT has not talked to SCCM at any point. It's all done through Intune. So given that all of that occurs in real time, and we're going out through a wireless router under the desk, that is talking live against Intune now. So that's a relatively impressive, fairly robust service. All right. Also, big it up for Windows Remote Assist.
Yeah. All right, what's new in R2? At the 18th of October, we all know that R2 is being shipped to the volume license customers, and I think last week or this week,
Windows 8.1 and Server 2012 R2 came out this week.
Yeah. And the 1st of November, it's general available. So we quickly,
That's okay.
Let's quickly go through the major new features for MDM, mobile device management. So what's new in inventory? We're now able to assign or to set a device if it's personal owned or company owned. So that allows us to select those devices in a collection and deploy certain apps to a company owned device.
For the evil-minded among you, imagine what you can do with reporting. I'm going to inventory my supposedly corporate-owned ones and see what's on them. Look at that. Subscribe, cool. CEO, go. So,
indeed, application inventory is there. For Windows iOS, it only inventories the applications that are installed through MDM. So that's a little side note. And app management, a new global condition is there. It's the company of a corporate versus personal. So you can create a requirement rule for a certain app that it's only allowed to be installed on a corporate-owned device. So resource access configuration, we're now able to deploy VPN profiles to our 8.1 Windows 8.1 devices and iOS and Android devices. So a cool feature of that is that we are able to, let's quickly go through, that we are able to set up an automatic VPN connection when a certain app is being launched. So, for instance, a corporate financial app has been launched, and we need the VPN connection for that. You don't need to manually enable set up the VPN connection. It's automatically connected to the home office, to the office when the application has been started. The VPN profiles, the most major SSL VPN vendors are supported, like you see Cisco, Juniper, Checkpoint, and Microsoft, of course. We're also able to deploy Wi-Fi settings, so if you want to enable the devices to connect automatically with a certificate to your corporate Wi-Fi network, you're able to do that from Config Manager. And in the next slide, we have
A big table.
for reference.
Your reference. All right. Can you treat me back over to here?
Yeah.
We'll do this really, really fast because I notice we're losing people to lunch. That's okay. All right, so this is back into the R2 console. You can see I've got my, under assets and compliance, I've got,
a little bit.
Sorry?
Missing a little bit.
Missing a little bit? Ah, okay, not much I can do. We've got our cert profiles. Now, this can be especially useful because it's not just the ability to deploy certs to domain joined Windows machines. We've got group policy and we can do that. But let's say we wanted to get a root CA out into the wider environment. I've gone and imported my CA cert. It's all in there, but I'm going to get that out to my iPhones, my iPads, and I can get that out to Android too. So if my mobile platforms need to be able to talk to internal web resources, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get that cert out there. This can handle it. In terms of my VPN profiles, gone through and just created a basic one. In terms of what Peter was talking about, how do you want it to work? What sort of connection type is it? Actually, that doesn't really help. Let me just... And you can import one if you've already got one. You can see in the connection type, we've got a number of options there. So depending on which vendor you have your investment with, it should be able to support that. And yep. And we can also do, if I jump back in, we can do, this is our automatic VPN on demand. So which server you're connecting to, which application is going to trigger, how's it going to work? And finally, we've got our Wi-Fi profiles. So this can be especially useful, say, in education, in health. If you've got someone coming into your environment and you have quite locked down Wi-Fi environments, what you can do is just get them to enroll with Windows Intune, and all of these Wi-Fi profiles just drop down. So you don't have to worry about 802.1x, you don't have to worry about certs, all of that is taken care of. And when they come on site, they are automatically productive because they're automatically connected. And again, this is supported across the full gamut. VPN is supported across, I think it's everything except Android. Let me double check, this is an R2, supported platforms, yep, everything except Android. All right, I think we've only got a couple of minutes left, yeah, so we'll just bang through the last remaining slides.
This one, selective wipe. We used to only support full wipe, so when a user lost his mobile device or lost his iPad or just... And also full wipe eventually. Yeah. We only were able to initiate a full wipe. We're now able to, with R2, we're able to do a selective wipe, and depending on the platform you're on, the email is being preserved or just being deleted. The Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi settings, your VPN settings, your certificates. See the list. And here's a nice table for reference when you're downloading the sheets. Don't say we don't give you tables. We give you tables. And so, that's it. We are done. So thanks for turning up. It is lunch, so you can either escape and we don't mind, or we're around for a couple of questions.